Like, and he's off.
Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you. Looking for a bold way to boost your business? Advertise with Silverline Comics, reaching readers across the U.S. and around the world. Affordable rates, passionate fans, and national and international exposure, all packed inside thrilling, action-packed comics. All ads must be PG-13, perfect for reaching all ages. Spots are limited. Grab your ad space today and become part of the adventure. Silverline Comics, where adventure lives and your brand thrives. Email us at silverlinepublishingllc@gmail.com for more information. And make mine Silverline.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
David Rios.
Hello.
Brent Larson.
Gosh, I'm tired.
Hey, comic fans.
And tonight we'll be talking about creating great bad guys. So everything from the visual design to the dialogue to motivation and character background, covering your full breadth of things, of the unstoppable just embodiment of evil to bad guys who maybe aren't really bad guys to, you know, someone who had something they could relate to but made some wrong choices along the way. So lots of great ways to create great bad guys, and comics are known for assembly having the best villains. In some cases, they're more memorable than their heroes. So we'll be getting into all of that. So I guess to start off tonight's show, I'll just do a quick panel of the room. What are some of your favorite bad guys in comics?
Right off the bat, I think growing up, when Marvel came on the scene immediately, all right, with launching Fantastic Four, it wasn't, within a couple issues, we had Doctor Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he has forever stayed one of my favorite villains. I mean, I really enjoyed the concept, the character, i.e. as the series went along, we learned that he was one of actually Ben's colleagues back in college. And they were competing for this or that. And as you mentioned earlier, Tim, the guy took the wrong turn. He's pretty much the dark side of Reed Richard when you look at both of them. All right, and over the years, his popularity with the fans has been huge. So yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite villains ever created in comics. A little while later, at Spider-Man's universe, we got Doc Octopus, which at the offset you looked at the character and you went, man, that is totally, wonky, cartoonish to a degree. But again, Stan Lee's writing and Ditko drawing, they started adding layers to who this guy was and his own obsessions. So those are two of my favorites right off the top of my head.
Sinestro.
Yeah.
Sinestro is one of my favorites. From, let's say, Marvel, it probably, for no real reason other than just a sheer lunacy, it'd have to be like, was it Arcade? Like Arcade for X-Men? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always loved Magneto because I still can't parse out if he's really a villain. He's done some bad things, but you know what? Bad things were done to him. Bad things were done to his people. I mean, and I keep thinking, what would I do if I had his kind of power? Would I let that continue against my people? I just don't think so. So,
right. Yeah, I have my own thoughts on Magneto, which we'll get to when we get to my contribution to conversation, because he's up there for me as well.
I'd have to say one I'd have to put in a group. One of my favorite from classic comics is the Hellfire Club. I have to group them into a group because there's so many different aspects interesting. The whole, extending out, including Magneto, the whole white gray aspect of that. But I'd have to say, if I turn around instead, kind of a singular villain, which actually kind of spreads out too. One of my favorite of all time, and I have, the first of the comics, the first few appearances of him is Green Goblin. Everything since he first appeared, and carrying along that is also the migration into creating the character and the opposition of Hobgoblin. So
I like Hobgoblin.
The goblins for me were really, really cool, and even the whole, father-son duo on the Green Goblin, Harry and Norman Osborn. I always found that very interesting. So,
absolutely.
I love
Rory. That's too much. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is some art going on from Marvel Rivals that is the skin that people are hoping, because Noel is coming back in the new Venom storyline, and so they're hoping that Rivals gave us some spoilers, and that there is a symbiote Squirrel Girl, and that she's been taken by one of Noel's symbiotes. Which that would be great. My own thoughts on Noel. I think Noel is like one of my favorite visual designs of a villain, but some of the most lackluster motivation and writing. And I hope he gets some redemption in the new arc. But he just looks so cool, and then the storyline is kind of very muddled and confusing. And happy birthday to Pops, and if you are,
that's right.
Yeah, and also Madness Roku channel has been submitted for approval, so we may be watchable on your Roku soon. My own personal favorites, I'd have to go again with Magneto. I'll give two different X-Men answers, just like kind of like run the full spectrum, like opposite ends of the spectrum. I love Magneto because kind of that point where like you're not even sure if he really is a bad guy, and for a lot of his interaction with the comics, he isn't even really a villain. He kind of does something villainous, gets taught a lesson, and then ends up supporting the X-Men in the next arc. or when you get to like the Joseph storyline where he's more or less a permanent member of the team, and even post Schism, really since 2013, he's more or less been a hero or anti-hero in the stable. And I just think of the great panels of him beating up Red Skull, the idea of the Red Skull, the kind of embodiment of supremacism and all those different thoughts, and Magneto's like, no, I'm going to kill you just by punching you because I know you want to die pure. So, and I'm going to prove that I'm still better than you on your own terms.
It's scary when Magneto's the moral compass. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Is like I always feel like Magneto and Cyclops actually work really well as foils to each other, and that they're both people that have been traumatized by Xavier in some way, whether being your brainwashed best friend or being a trained child soldier. But and they both have this hardline stance, but where you see where Cyclops has this hard line of I stopped to prevent any more deaths, and Magneto's hard line is I fight to stop mutant deaths. And kind of that you have these interesting discussions between the two of them where I think they play really well as foils. And then on the other end of the moral compass, I like Apocalypse because he is kind of just like moral good is serving me. That is that's really right, is to serve me as the supreme mutant. And even when we get introduced to his wife, his ex-wife, and his family and this whole thing, we're like, oh, we might get some redeeming factors for Apocalypse. It's like, no, we all just fight each other. The problem is she's better than me at fighting, so I need help. And I thought that was a very fun of Reese commit to Apocalypse being this very morally dark and black person. Like but even when you get that, like something that could be used to give him some relatability or gravitas is just no. It's double down on the idea that Apocalypse fights and conquers, and that is Apocalypse. And then even his wife fights and conquers, and you kind of have to choose which one you're going to support in this weird battle royale.
I want to give honorable mention to a character that a friend of mine introduced me to, Sleeper.
Oh, Sleeper's so good.
Sleeper's so crazy, dude.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one.
Sleeper is a symbiote, a venom, like one of the Venom symbiotes and whatnot. But he doesn't like to get caught. He doesn't like he has mental powers where like he can, like the host, he will literally parasite and take over the host, and then he doesn't care. And so his symbiote form, like when they come on, they're all like blobby and whatnot. His symbiote form is a cat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he works a lot with oh crap, who's Eddie Brock's son?
Dylan. Dylan, yeah.
Dylan, yeah. So he works a lot with Dylan. Because like he doesn't want to take Dylan over, but also he's like, I'm gonna be your symbiote, but at a distance. Just don't touch me.
You're right.
Wow.
Well, another interesting symbiote thing that they've been playing with recently is Princess.
Oh yeah.
In Deadpool. So
I'm still catching up on some of that stuff, but yeah. And I know that there's something that got mentioned in Weapon X-Force. Yeah.
Well, she's considered a daughter of Deadpool, along with Ellie, so that's an interesting. And she's normally in the form of a big dog, big wolf.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man, I feel like I stepped away for what, a month, and suddenly Deadpool has a daughter. Eddie Brock has a son.
He has two daughters, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't necessarily read Marvel. So any updates I get on Marvel's from one of my friends who's a big Marvel fan. And so like for certain things, you know what I mean? He's a big like Belasco and Mephisto fan and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But like he's been following the Venom symbiote stuff. So like anytime I ask him any questions, he's like, oh yeah, let me talk to you about it. Let me explain it to you and whatnot. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can remember back in the 70s, not so much earlier, but by the 70s, I think, and not so much Marvel, but DC had this like intertitle rivalries between their heroes as far as who had the best rogues galleries. All right. So you had Superman with his list of villains, Batman with his list of villains, the Flash. The Flash had a really half dozen, some really awesome, crazy villains. All right. The thing with me was enjoying that as much as I did when the 90s came along and Warner Brothers brought us that amazing Batman animated series, right? By Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, right? Dini basically let loose with, I think, creating some really memorable Batman villains. I mean, starting with Harley Quinn off the bat, who's now, classic and entrenched in the Batman lore. But one of the wonkiest villains they created for that series was what you would have thought was hilarious, stupid, and crazy. But the more he reappeared, it was eerie and creepy. And that was the ventriloquist with the puppet Scarface. Man, those were some of the best episodes of that series, because that puppet and his milquetoast little ventriloquist guy, right? It was creepy. It was almost frightening to a point, okay? And it was just absolutely great, brilliant writing on Dini's part.
There was a lot of good work and rework. Even within the series, I liked how they reworked the characters even throughout the different seasons. When they made that abrupt artwork change. I've always felt that Batman has always had one of the most diverse rogue villain casts. So many different variations and things on that. So very, very interesting things, and they did do some phenomenal things with that show. Absolutely. So the stylistic redesigns of them were definitely good, and it was great that they carried a lot of that over into the subsequent series, like the Superman series, and Justice League,
and Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, and all across the board. So yeah.
Not to sidetrack us, but I've always been a fan of Batman's stable of villains, more so in DC than really anyone else. There's some villains in DC where I feel like they're very clear victims of the Gold Age and Silver Age and never got the appropriate updates. Like Marvel villains, I feel like, Doctor Doom, Red Skull, these people like have received updates through the ages to either adjust their design, their motives, or even like redo their name, personality. And DC ended up getting a lot of stuff where they just sticks. I mean, as memey as Gorilla Grodd is, as a design, it's very just kind of like, and other things where like you get very like on the nose names, whatever. But there's something like I still like, almost like, I don't know if it's like comforting in how stable those villains are and how long lasting they are. Or much as like it was like a nostalgia to seeing someone that hasn't changed a whole lot in 60 years.
Right.
But something I always find interesting is the idea of short-term villains or characters that get introduced momentarily where it's very clearly that the writer and the artist create something new, and maybe editorials don't know what to do with it from that point on, or if it just kind of like dies out and fizzles, or it does its job, serves a story, and then it ends, something which doesn't really happen in comics a lot. Like, how many times has I'll use Red Skull for example, because Captain America has no qualms killing him. But how many times has Red Skull died?
Right.
Yeah. But something I liked. I'm going to kind of share an image here because I also want to get the views from the artists on this character. Something that I really liked from Batman, since we're talking about some of the DC stables here, is someone who I feel like should have got put into a stable but did not. He was only in it for 4 issues. But as a villain, given the context of the story, it kind of makes sense. But in theory, as a villain, he is someone who would be able to run miles around Joker, Riddler, and a bunch of other people in the Batman pantheon. Up here. So this is a character called the Designer.
Oh,
And I felt like it was kind of like a really great, cool idea, and that he was essentially the mastermind who had built the plan that would lead to Bruce Wayne's downfall. However, before he'd done everything, Joker had somehow got to him, killed him, and reanimated him, and then used him as a puppet. But this guy supposedly was like on an intellect of Bruce Wayne's, if not superior. And I had literally like built Gotham. I built a system into Gotham that would be able to trap Batman and all of his villains into a death game before Joker did his thing. So as a villain, like I'm super into his power set, his skill set, right? I feel like his visual design is busy in all the right ways that you kind of want a villain to be visually busy. And he's only in there for 4 issues, and I think it would have been great if, the comics, like I said, we're not afraid of bringing people back from the dead. It'd be kind of great to bring him back from the dead again, but this time truly as himself, not as a puppet to the Joker. Because I feel like the Designer going to war with the Joker and then Batman getting stuck in the middle of that could lead to some really fun race against the clock style stuff as, the Designer's collapsing Gotham in around Joker and Batman's trying to stop it.
Okay, so have you read that storyline already, Tim?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, does a face wrap ever come off?
It does not.
Okay. From a design point of view, I don't like that at all.
Interesting.
I mean,
okay.
everything else is, like you said, it's kind of busy, you know what I mean? But it's a pretty solid silhouette. Like, even if you just remove the cape but keep the shoulder thing pieces and whatnot, and like fill it all in with black, it's a pretty solid silhouette. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty solid design. If you just see a shadow of this dude somewhere, and you wouldn't see his head, you would just see all the frills and whatnot from the fur or whatever it is. Like, I think it's pretty solid. You know what I mean? Like, you would recognize that character. And that's really from an artistic point of view. Like, you want characters, be it villains or heroes, you want them to have a very defining, you know what I mean, silhouette. And like I said, essentially, if you filled it all in black, would you be able to recognize who that is, right? So if you take Dr. Doom, fill it all in black, you're pretty much going to be able to recognize him. Spider-Man, I mean, if he's in a particular pose, you'd recognize who he was, but if he was just standing there, you really wouldn't. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like,
I don't know.
The arms, you would.
I don't know, for Spider-Man, or particularly when I see Miles Morales, I see a lot of like shadowed versions, and I can pretty much tell
compared to Peter.
Miles. Yeah, the build.
So if they weren't standing next to each other, right? Say they were just like whatever. You know what I mean? I know that Miles is shorter than well, I mean, he used to be anyway, shorter than Peter, but the design, their physical form is basically the same. Their costume is obviously different, but if, like I said, if you filled them black, they pretty much would look alike. I mean, if you they were roughly the same size,
they would be close, but Miles would always be skinnier. I know originally the idea was Peter Parker was really thin and weak when he came out.
Or if we saw was it Ultimate Peter Parker, he was pretty thin. Like, I'm not talking about, I'm really talking about just like the general form of Peter Parker. And I'm not knocking them, like, they're whatever, you know what I mean? But I mean, to me, they're about the same. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I have 2 things to weigh in about this character design. My first thing to weigh in is they took a blender, They threw Mysterio in there. They threw Kraven the Hunter in there.
I was thinking the same thing.
And they threw Hush in there and blended them together and spit it out. That's the first thing.
You gotta respect the MC Hammer pants.
The second thing is completely separate from comics. I look at this guy and go, to me, this guy looks like he was a design reference from a Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. I'm assuming you guys maybe see that too. So
right,
there's some of it. But that's what I get from this. Very busy. Seems like there's quite a bit of competing elements. From the baggy, and it looks like it's part, like almost a camo in the pants and everything.
That was my guess, was camo.
The big, body, I don't know, headdress type or whatever, just big body piece and all that, and it's like I said, Mysterio, you just took his ball off and you put Hush's head on him, and it's kind of what you got there. So
yeah, what I thought was really interesting is it is this mixed match of like you said, competing elements where you have like a more modern military jacket and trousers underneath, but then you have riding boots, the grand epaulettes with the fabric, like the ruffling on the cape, whatever that is, and also the boat, like the tie, but then also with the like Mr. T level jewelry.
Yeah, I was gonna say all the jewelry.
Yeah.
Well,
and yeah,
I'll be honest, because I don't want to hate on your guy, Tim, but I think he looks like a deranged pimp, basically.
Yeah.
He's even got what looks like a cane. Like he basically looks like he wants to say, "Where's my money, biatch?" But on the other hand, you like him, and that's all we need, right? So
sure.
Well, so if you silhouette him out, it looks like Don King's holding his coat.
Yeah. That's kind of thing. Well, that's what we're talking about, though, is we're breaking down why it works for some people and why it doesn't work for others.
Right.
Because when you're making like villain designs or character designs in general, but specifically the villain, because the villain doesn't need to have that big silhouette. They need to have that ominous shadow because it's a trope at this point, and they just use it to good effect. But and it kind of seemed like this character was designed silhouette first, and it kind of filled in from that point. Also, like he does have this giant sword, but he has, I think, what are 2 shotgun cartridges hanging off the end of it.
I thought they were fishing lures.
But
somebody mounted half a nunchuck on there,
right?
But then you get into the idea of the character, right? And that he is the designer. So this whole thing is about creating the grand design beforehand, and then it just goes off and does its thing. And part of that is using non-obvious parts, or things that are not what you expect to work together. Which ended up, you create this great scene where you have 2 separate incidents happening that are completely unrelated with 2 different gangs. Like Penguin's gang is doing one thing, the Clowns are doing another, but it's all been set in motion beforehand. And in theory, they're creating, the events happening to be at odds with each other, but the goal is actually the third option, which is you're sticking Batman in the middle of this and causing Batman to accidentally kill a kid because he's whipping his Batmobile around 120 miles per hour through a lamppost.
Okay.
And so it serves the character, but by itself it doesn't really stand out as much. And then you get something like Magneto's outfit, like his classic outfit, which is just a great silhouette, works really well by itself. But when you get into like the thing of it, you get into the complaint with his early outfit is not as good as his more modern outfits, and that does not do a whole lot to serve his character's motif. It's kind of man in purple and red spandex, kind of does spandexy things until we get either the big M or to the point where he has the metal epaulettes or the metal vambraces.
Give me Age of Apocalypse Magneto. That costume is great.
Yeah. So, kind of from the artist's point of view, or as writers, we have our own ideas about like our own grand vision. But from the artist's point of view, how much is that competition, and how much does that weigh in the idea of creating a design that is built around the personality of the villain versus what is actually just visually good and works well by itself, but may not be related to the character at all and kind of might feel like almost an afterthought, I would think.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the time of their creation and what is going on at that. I mean, not specifically to villain, but a perfect example is, look at, Colossus' original outfit and then as he progressed along, it's got more and more like, off of a spandex, more onto like accessories and, plates on his arms and things like that. So, if you turn around and you say, okay, well, let's look at like, let's look at weird villains like Eunice the Untouchable and, the Changeling and stuff like that, as they're initially introduced, that worked perfectly well for the times. But as, they get reintroduced, it's like, you have to step in and you just have to change things.
The Changeling like
what?
The Changeling like Morph? Wasn't that his original name was Changeling?
Yeah, it was originally
the big purple head helmet.
No, the original Changeling had all of the I think he had all the parts of the X-Men. So he had the wings, he had the
that's Mimic.
Black, Mimic, sorry.
Right? Yeah. No, you're good.
But I know Changeling was also ended up being Morph, and there's some design differences there as well. So
yeah, his design was just weird. Like at the beginning, like, if you ever look up his character design, like before they changed it to the whole white face, yellow cape morph and whatnot, it was like this purple suit with this weird like purple helmet with like 3 like little, not horns, but like out thingies from protrusions from the helmet. That guy was weird.
Yeah. So, and even like you're talking about with Magneto, as they went through, they still kind of kept the same, with the exception of the M. I don't like to talk about the M that much. Not one of my favorite designs.
Yeah, that one was weird.
Yeah.
But, they tended to keep a lot of the similar, obviously the helmets stayed the same, but a lot of the the upper body piece with the the kind of round rivets and all this stuff, they modernized it and all that. And I think that's something that I think plays well with characters. And then you have other characters that get completely redesigned, like Namor, going from his 40s outfit to what was it in the somewhere in the 2010s, I think he was, or even more recent than that, he was in the black outfit,
the
long
the
hair.
Black vest or not.
Yeah. So it's a matter of what what works, what doesn't work, and how much you update and go with the original design versus coming in and throwing in the 90s, throwing 20 different pockets on and calling it a new outfit. So
Okay. And someone mentioned to building the backstory. So I'm kind of going to keep on using the designer as a stepping off point, because I feel like as a villain he hits this really weird talking point or counterpoint for a lot, where DC villains or comic villains for the big two especially exist right now. But even in some independents, I feel like we get to the issue where independent comic creators either ape the big two too much, or feel like this is not a trope of the two, but a trope of the medium in general. So how do you guys feel about having a villain that dies and stays dead?
Is there such a thing?
Right.
That thing is like, does a great villain need to have this constant threat of, are they truly dead? Are they coming back? Or can it be something where we have a set point and conclusion where the character has been dealt with and they're dead, and maybe there are, it could be on the same, there's mental ramifications for the hero from that point going on. Like, does the death of this villain weigh on them? Does the death of this villain teach them something? Or does it, do other things to impact the rest of the storytelling, the rest of the world? Because, in storytelling, everything needs to serve some point or some purpose, so it will affect the rest of the world if a character dies. So, what make a better villain, or what can both cases be done well?
Well, my thing is I'm a big proponent of a character dies and doesn't come back. I like that idea. But a perfect idea, and I think that they, in my opinion, they ruined it, is Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter should have stayed dead. Kraven's last hunt was such a well-defined, well-written storyline and resolved so many issues that I don't think they should have not brought him back. And then, they brought him back and he's anti-hero now. It's like, I guess you can kind of branch that out and say, does a villain, when he becomes an anti-hero, is that kind of, to a degree, a death of the character? Like Venom. Should Venom have just stayed Venom and not become Lethal Protector and all that stuff? I don't know. It's like, some of the ones I think are good, and I think Kraven should have stayed dead because that was a very well designed send off to him. He mentally brain whatever. I'm not going to use the F word, but Spider-Man, he messed him up, and the storyline just pulled everything in and wrapped a nice bow on it. And then it's like, we'll just bring him back. And to me, it kind of cheapened the experience. I'll let other people talk. I've been talking a lot.
You're good. It's good to hear some of your insight about it, Dave, like for real. I, for one, am okay with a villain dying if the villain, like, in creating your story, right? And I'm not a writer, but in creating your storyline, your story, if the villain was always meant to die, then I'm totally okay with that. As long as it, like you said, as long as it feeds into the direction of the story that needs, that needs to be told, the story that you want to tell. Like, in the end, the villain dies, I'm okay with that. Does he come back? Nah, I'm okay if he doesn't. You know what I mean? Because he fulfilled his purpose, concluding or reaching the climax of that particular story. What say you writers?
Yeah. Well, kind of like to Roy's point, there depends on the nature of the villain, and I kind of I'm also going to give a hot and Marvel take in that I think that Thanos' character should also stay dead. In that, like, Thanos, like, for the storyline that he was the main villain and architect of, was great. Like, in the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, all fantastic. And then you get the idea that, like, Infinity Watch and all is well. And with Thanos doing this whole thing because he loves death, it makes this really poetic thing of that he ends up dying in the end and ends up meeting death in a different way rather than the goal he set to do. So I feel like it makes this really kind of poetic end to a storyline if he stays dead during Infinity Watch.
For the record, people that don't read comics and watch the movies, that was the reason why, not the whole population thing.
Yeah. And like, then at some point it kind of feels like the editorial staff comes back and is like, oh, we need a big threat, bring back Thanos. And again, the writer's just like, I have an idea. But then you have a character like Kang the Conqueror, where his idea is that he exists outside space and time altogether. That the reason why Kane wins is because there's an infinite Kanes that keep on coming back.
Right.
For the nature of the villain means that like even if you kill him, you can't actually kill him, and so that serves to make him menacing and does his own storytelling well at that point. So it is one of those things where, like, depending on the nature of the villain, and I think we should be more okay with characters staying dead.
Well, it just kind of feels like the nature of the medium, though. I mean, whenever I think of really significant, and I'm not just talking deaths, I'm talking like marriages, I'm talking about anything that's of any emotional consequence in a comic book. You think about the natural progression of the character, you think about the natural progression of life, and you realize that it is all seconded to what sells and whatever the current creative team really wants to do. I mean, that is really basically what it comes down to. I remember, you guys remember One Last Day when Marvel decided that Peter and MJ couldn't be married anymore. Mm-hmm. It was just limiting their characters too much. And one of the last things MJ says to Peter is, one day we'll find a way back to each other. And I remember thinking, no, they won't. Mm-hmm. And if they do, they'll just get split up again, which is, I mean, it was at that moment that I started realizing I'm going to have to look at comics differently, or I'll just get fed up and leave.
Right.
Because the simple truth is, Pete and MJ will find each other until Marvel decides it isn't good for sales, and then they'll break him up again. In other words, the story is not king. I love storytelling. I hate elements in storytelling that aren't organic to the story. Mm-hmm. Anything that comes in, if it's a political move, if it's clearly to make money, then it just kind of taints the whole thing. And comics, it's so hard to get away from unless you're going to tell a story that is not involving characters that aren't your IP, which means, yes, Kraven is going to come back. Why? Because it doesn't matter why. Because they want him back. That's the only reason. And they'll try really hard to make sense of it so that it doesn't seem like, holy cow, electrical wires fell on Kraven's grave and suddenly he's back.
Shocked back to life.
He's shocked, yes. And but why? It doesn't matter why. It's because Kraven's a cool character, and they thought, I bet you we could do more stuff with Kraven. So it sucks. But in a way, it's almost like that is kind of what we buy into when we become comic fans. I mean, how many times have I read Wolverine dying? And I'm like, I want to pull out my watch and set my timer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or when the Human Torch dies. I mean, it was a great story because you got to see how the Fantastic Four muddles on without him, how Spider-Man becomes the fourth in the four, and what it's like for that. But the whole time you're just waiting for Johnny Storm to come back. Why? Because he's supposed to be there. It doesn't make sense to the story. It doesn't make sense to the character. It doesn't make sense to life. It makes sense to the bottom line. It is just kind of what it is. I kind of hate it. It's kind of what we sign on for.
And I think kind of also when you get to a point where I think you also, my brain is not working. So when you get the ones like that, where you have like a ham-fisted editorial decision, or you have the thing coming back to like, well, we need to be here in 2 years, undo this and find a way to get us over here. I think then you can tell some really great stories within those constraints if there is more leeway in it, but also it becomes even more of a test, and he takes a really skilled creative team. And the death of Johnny Storm, I felt like the aftermath wasn't as interesting as it could have been. Yeah, it's great having Johnny Storm moving into Spider-Man, and you have the weird dynamic of Peter trying to run Parker Industries while his roommate is a partying space gladiator. But what if, like, even more if then instead of that, it was Johnny Storm just spent however many months or years because of time dilation in the negative zone or whatever as a gladiator in Annihilus' kingdom, being killed, brought back to life, and constantly being, like, experimented on, having new stuff done to him. Johnny Storm should be dealing with, like, years of therapy and PTSD when he comes back.
Yeah.
Earth. And you can do a really good, deep story if you would take the time to explore that carefully and respectfully for people who deal with PTSD, and have a really good character mode of, Peter Parker is also, like, it should be a very traumatized character because
I should be in therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Storm had a girlfriend for what, 3 years, and then after 3 years finds out she was a Skrull.
Yeah, he was married to her. Yeah, I know. But it's the same thing with him dying. It's like, but wouldn't that deepen the character? Wouldn't that deepen his story and his tragedy and make him more interesting? Well, maybe, but he's Johnny Storm. We want him to be Johnny Storm.
Right.
He's the guy who's like Joey from Friends. Like, would you ever want to have Joey from Friends? Like, you find out he has a tragic backstory and
all of a sudden he's morose.
Wow, what a terrible idea. And that's what you're dealing with, basically.
Yeah. That's also, I kind of have the same opinion of Cosmonaut Variety Hour, and the reason why I do like some of the offerings from Marvel and DC currently going on, but you have to be selective with it because, there's good stuff out there and there's bad stuff. For once, there's just a lot of stuff. One of the things I like a lot about is the X-Men, because the X-Men are not afraid of changing, either letting people, people don't want to stay dead, but at least the reasons for that make a little more sense. But they're not afraid to change characters' personalities or locations or whatever. Like, we have not been Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters since the 80s. But you end up getting, like, the current storyline with Magneto, who has died and come back to life in a way that has sapped his powers. And so now you have Magneto, the fact that, like, he has seen death, he has seen the afterlife, been brought back from that. His body is no longer doing what it's supposed to do. His powers are fizzing out, and he is now dealing with the fact that, like, Xavier has betrayed mutant kind in some way. So now he is acknowledging, like, I have to be the moral leader of this group of outcasts, because if I don't, we get Utopia militant Cyclops again.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess I'm intriguing.
Exactly. It's the thing, like, you have to be willing to beat up your characters and like, actually give them a genuine storyline of, like, Magneto has a lot to learn and deal with here. And, like, he is not the master of magnetism right now. He is barely able to walk. And so you're watching this old man who is used to having Omega level power take care of kids that he has, like, at times fought against, at times, like, taken under his own wing, as well as, this whole thing where he's also, like, talking to Dark Beast and Kid Omega and trying to educate them on being like, no, we're here because we mean something to people, and we can't be, like, is this whole line where they're talking about, like, the one of the storylines that happened last year, a year ago. It was a group was creating fake mutants. They were doing, like, the Inhuman storyline where they're activating X genes later in life. And you got someone's like, well, are they even really mutants? Do we really need to care for them? He says, like, we don't get to make that call. They're mutants, so therefore they're under protection. Like, we are not, like, we can't make that decision for them. And when, like, compare that to how Magneto would have been in the past, where he says, like, you're a born mutant, or, you're homo inferior, get out of my way. And so, but yeah, there's that thing where compare that to Johnny Storm going straight back from being a space gladiator for however long, having bug parts literally shoved inside of him, and the next day he's getting blackout drunk and partying. Like, that doesn't make sense for the character.
Yeah. Welcome to comics.
One of the things that Rory actually touched upon in the comments was the whole Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul's thing was cheating death, but it wasn't just. I mean, you think about, was it Dog Day Afternoon? What was the recurring story where, no matter what, they just kept dying and regenerating, dying. They did that in an episode of Supernatural as well.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
they're just continuously dying and all that. And the thing that they did really well was they never did that type of thing with Raish. I mean, you accepted that he had a Lazarus pit, and the Lazarus pit would rejuvenate him, and he would not come back the same. It would take time. So they didn't cheapen it by just killing him every possibility they could. He's going to sit here and he's trying to stop Batman and he's blowing up. So he's staying in the building while the building blows up because he knows that he'll just be reincarnated later. They don't do that. They don't cheapen the moment. And, so I think if you go in with a set of rules and your rules are, okay, this guy's spiel, his kick is, among other things, he can be reincarnated, but it's like that ahead of time, and it's not something that's cheapened. So I think that works pretty well. I think that's okay. But when it's like so and so died in when the ship went down, and then we got to download on sales. That guy was popular. Let's just bring him back, and he's just all of a sudden the guy that in the trench coat pulls the trench coat off, and it's your villain that you love so much. He's back.
I mean, that's pretty much what they did with Eric the Red, didn't they? Eric the Red put the X-Men on trial and stuff like that, and it was Eric the Red Eric the Red was actually it was Cyclops, and Eric the Red was Magneto and whatnot. Eric the Red is weird.
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah, and then you remember the Zorn or when Magneto dies?
Zorn, Magneto, yeah.
And that was great. That was Grant Morrison, and he knows what he's doing when he's writing. So that's almost like that's basically what it comes down to is, you never want to cheapen it. What you want to do is treat it seriously with as many themes that actually resonate with real life as you can. So what would happen if you had a character that constantly regenerated? Well, he wouldn't have a concept of death, which means everything about the way he lives life would change, but it would also isolate him from other people, and it would probably make him a little crazy. And then you're kind of getting a picture of a kind of story that you can tell.
Deadpool.
Yeah. If he just pops out
I was going to say more. I like the idea of kind of evolving that more into like a Dorian Gray story, where like you kind of don't have the concept of life and whatnot, like of living life, but Dorian Gray just did everything and was able to just get rid of all the bad stuff that happened to him, all the drugs and all the diseases he picked up and whatnot, and went into the picture. He didn't have to suffer anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the what I was referring to with how they show like the impact of that Lazarus pit and how you can like add to the dark, like almost inhuman factor of Ra's al Ghul. Like, you can tell like how much of a monster he is, because when Jason Todd comes from back, that he's not going back to being the pluckiest, like quippiest Robin. He goes back to the first thing he does is he finds Bruce and says, "You're wrong. I want nothing to do with you." and like, okay, if that's like one experience in this pit, like for Rach, like the descent into being jaded and murderous.
Yeah. I don't know. And for me, it always comes down to if you got a writer who's willing to really lean into something about a character that maybe hasn't been explored yet, then like, do you remember in the 80s there was a character who he was a Captain America guy. He was killing off all the minor villains. Do you remember this? In fact, he would wander into other Marvel books and kill all the minor villains in their books. What was his name? Anyway, I think Cap pulled his mask off at some point, and he would always yell, "Justice is served." And it was Mark Gruenwald said he invented that character it basically is a way to clean house with Marvel, because he just felt like there was a bunch of dopey villains running around and he just wanted to get rid of them. And I think it was John Byrne or somebody pushed back on it, because he was like, but you can take a dopey character and make him good just by telling a really compelling story about him. And I guess that's what it always comes down to. So if you think of any stupid character in the DC or Marvel universe, and you just start thinking about, well, what is he about? Who is he really? And why does he want to be a villain? And you can actually start telling some halfway decent stories just by doing that.
That's like the Suicide Squad movie, the most recent one, with like Polka Dot Man and King Shark.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly Polka Dot Man, where actually like take time to like know their actual like human motives and human themes that he is dealing with. It's just that he has chosen a very strange way of letting it out. It's kind of got like the lottery bottom dollar when it comes to like power aesthetics. But you still have the idea, like, no, he's a guy who was traumatized by an abusive mother, and this is like he ended up losing it, and this is him finding a home again. But he's just a very odd out there guy.
Yeah, that's something worth investigating there.
Yeah. So I guess kind of what we come down to is what really comes into creating a great bad guy is being real with their themes and their experiences and exploring that in a way whether they survive or don't, but in a way that is honest to their experience and that leads to growth in the story, and creating an individual profile that is unique and stands out, but doesn't necessarily get lost in the sauce.
I'm surprised. We've had a complete show that we haven't heard from Ron at all. Ron,
only because you follow the thread of this conversation. I think Brent made a statement which I appreciated a great deal, because I followed through in a different way than he did. I've been reading comics since I was 7 years old. I got to that point where he talks about realizing that, nothing here is going to change. It didn't, and I left it. I haven't read a DC or a Marvel comics in well over 25 years. Why? They don't change. Okay. Now I could say I don't read comics, but that's not true, because way prior to doing that and making that decision of not wasting my time on stuff that doesn't change, I started reading independents a lot more. And that's what I do read. I read independents. I think that's where comics live today. I think that's where we still find originality, and topics like we're having today have a lot more value. The Marvel and DC, no thanks.
The stakes are higher in independent.
Yeah,
says for sure.
Yeah, because you can kill off a character, walk off, and write something else later on. Yeah, he won't come back. She won't come back. It has value. It has meaning. It has definition. That's good writing.
Yeah.
Well, Roland said he feels that, if I'm quoting him correctly, that the great stories, the stories that are gonna like hold true and people are gonna really connect with are coming from independent creators. They're coming from small press creators. They're coming from people that don't necessarily they're not trying to mimic or mime the big two, the big three, and whatnot. They're doing their own sort of I don't like what they were doing here. I don't like what they were doing here. Like, I want to tell a solid story. You know what I mean? And they're real stories. You know what I mean? They're creative stories, and not being influenced by whatever cultural angle is gonna.
Well, I think comic readers. I really respect comic readers, and I think they're some of the the more enlightened, smartest people in the world today. The truth of the matter is that they're eventually going to get to that point that Brent was talking about. They're going to realize that if they want something, all right, with value that will make them think of something else or help them mature in their reading, they're going to leave Marvel and DC. They have to. They're corporate comics. And no matter how much they change, they're going to stay the same. It's the bottom line. It's commercial. All right. But when you go to independent comics, again, like we're talking about, if you have an idea for a story that has a beginning, a middle, and end, that's it. You finish it and you walk away. And you don't come back to those characters ever again. That story's complete. It's done. And I have read some amazing, in the last, those 20 years I'm talking about, people like Greg Rucker and other people that I admire a great deal have written some really limited, great independent comics that I think of all the time. And I'll go back off my shelves and pick them up and reread them again and again because of that.
Yeah.
And that's my 2 cents, gentlemen.
Well, Tim, if you were a villain, what would be your powers and motivation?
Yeah, I just got that one from Roy. So yeah, if I was a villain, oh my gosh, my motivation. I feel like I'd have to do something. I mean, I don't be like full like mojo, but since like my main things are like tech and entertainment, I feel like I'd have to be some sort of like neuromancer, like some sort of like, you know, like technology based manipulation, either that's like psychically hacking stuff or talking to machines, or being able to like construct and actually that'd be great, be able to do hard light and data constructs in real life, like being able to essentially code real life.
Coding in real life. I'm just saying, Tim, if you ever become Mojo, I'll be your domo, dude. I'll be your hype man.
Just start eating a lot of Twinkies.
That's right.
But then my motivation would probably be something more along the lines of like something like I'll probably like do like an interesting pastiche character where it'd be like motivation similar to like Black Tom Cassidy, where like you guys have like created technology to the point where you're like polluting the oceans and just like going through like an awful amount of water and like clean water that's now being used to fuel like these massive AI plants. Like at some point we've lost the plot for technology, and so I don't know, some sort of like technological reclaimer trying to like hack us to a better way of progression.
I feel that you've given that one awful amount of thought, Tim. Not just I wonder what kind of villain. No, you've thought about that.
Right.
When does my villain arc start?
Yeah.
Yes. If you guys could pick any sort of villainistic power or like your cause for going to villainy, what would that be? Well, that'll be our question to end the show with.
I'd be Wanda. I would make my own bubble world and make things fit the way I want, and make everyone do what I say. Like if I was a villain, I mean, that's the villain. You know what I mean? I like the idea, like in the WandaVerse like show and whatnot, how she created this bubble, and it like I know like it was all like going back and like was it the 20 like Leave It to Beaver kind of black and white stuff? Like there's some things I would just be like, I'm gonna fix you guys. And I'll be honest, you guys have slipped. Let's go back to basics. It would take a world of superheroes to beat me. But still, Tim, if you go full mojo, I'm your domo. I'll run your buttons and be your hype man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard.
It's hard thinking about what kind of villain you're going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've all had those moments like, man, this is when my arc starts. It's going to happen today. I just know it. Going into work, when I used to go into work, just walking, today's the day. Today's the day my villain arc starts.
I think for me, it would be that I accidentally did something really bad. And then I just have to start knocking people off when they find out, because I just hate the idea that people wouldn't like me or that they knew that I would do something wrong. So it would all be
start taking out the witnesses.
Yes, exactly. So
Perfect.
yeah, at the end of the day, or at the end of that issue, I imagine I would probably be in some kind of Outer Limits, Black Mirror, like an insane asylum, and I'm in a straitjacket and I'm going, no, I'm really a nice guy. Yeah. Yes, I would not be minimalist in my dialogue. So
Right. Ron, you got a story arc? You got a villain arc in mind?
Years ago, one of the issues of Mr. Jigsaw that I wrote, we had to come up with these goofy villains that Mr. Jigsaw would fight. And I had this idea of somebody who was basically a boring individual and ultimately was like the most boring person who ever walked the face of the earth. So boring, in fact, that when he yawned, people around him fell asleep. And suddenly realizes, I'm going to walk into a bank, I'm going to yawn, everybody's going to fall asleep, and I'll just walk out with all the money. And so, yeah, he was Captain Yawn, and we had a fella working with him. So I think that would be my, super villain, superpower,
Right.
There you go, right? Don't get violent. Don't hurt people. Just give you away with them. That's all.
One of those accidental discoveries.
Exactly. You got it.
Yes, a little biblical humor there. Yes.
What about you, Dave?
I don't know.
Round the home.
I don't know. I would probably end up being some villain that creates some kind of anti-reality and then gets stuck in it. It like breaks. That's just my luck. That's how my super villainy would work.
You ever watch that episode of The Twilight Zone where this dude was a banker? He had like thick glasses and whatnot, and every day he'd go into the vault to read a book, right?
Yep.
And then at one point, like his wife is naggy, like didn't like it when he read. He loved to read, and then he goes into the vault to read, and like bomb hits and just destroys the entire town, right? He's like, oh my gosh, everyone's gone. Like. But now I have enough time to read. And as he goes up to the library, he grabs all these books. Like, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to start with this. And then his glasses fell off, and he steps on him and breaks him. He's like, no, it's not fair. It's not fair. That would be Dave.
Yeah, that would be my classic luck, right?
Classic
right.
episode.
The way it is.
All the time in the world.
Oh, is that what it's called?
It was called All the Time in the World.
I haven't been paying attention to the names, but I have systematically been working my way through the Twilight Zone episodes.
Speaking of independent comics,
speaking
of independent comics, there is a Twilight Zone series hitting shores soon. It's gonna be a Twilight Zone miniseries. I think it's gonna be 6 issues.
Ooh,
like a comic book?
Yeah, I think IDW's putting it out.
All right.
Interesting.
There's a few of those horror anthology series that are hitting stands, actually.
Yeah, you have to check that out.
Ron's got a book coming out soon as well.
Yeah.
Right? Am I correct, Ron?
I have a graphic novel of finally an adaptation of a pulp character that I have been writing for the last 15 years, Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger, and hooked up with a local artist here, a guy who's worked professionally for the last few years, named Joe Arnold. And what we're doing is a graphic novel adaptation of the original novel, the origin story. And we've got a Kickstarter being built right now. And Tim, if you want to show the cover for that, by all means.
See that.
I have already gone on to notify me on launch. You can go.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that, Jose.
Just saying.
We got
add that in there for
what
you.
basically is it's it's the preview page for, the Kickstarters where you can basically sign up for when it launches. I think Joe's looking at the 12th of the month to launch it, but the graphic novel is 130 pages, and what we're going to be doing is splitting it in 3 parts. The first part each part will also have a bonus short at the end, a 5 or 6 to 8 page short Brother Bones story done by another artist, a guest artist. And there you go, Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger.
All right.
Yeah. I believe Ron, you shared some pages on that. Not that you sent that out, but on your social media, because I'm pretty sure isn't that the one that's got a lot of gray tones to it?
Yeah. If you check out my Facebook page and scroll down a bit, last week I posted like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 early pages from Joe's art. And initially, when Joe was doing it, we had debated whether to do it in color or not, black and white or color.
Yeah.
And Joe came back to me and said, I can grayscale this. And then when I started seeing the finished pages, it blew me away. I mean, the basic concept of Brother Bones is my fascination for old films, old movies from the 30s and 40s. And so what I did was I wanted to incorporate the feel of the old Universal monsters with the old Warner Brothers gangster movies. And that's the concept of Brother Bones. It takes place in a fictional city on the Northwest coast called Cape Noir. And Bones, at the beginning of the story, is actually a hired gun for one of the biggest mobs in town. Ultimately, he is murdered himself, and something happens to him, whereas he doesn't go to hell or go to heaven. Instead, he gets sent back to atone for his life of crime and villainy by becoming this undead avenger. And he finds this skull mask, which he dons, because basically he's a walking zombie. But now his task is to protect the good people of Cape Noir and take on all the other gangs and mobsters and whatever. And it was fun. It's fun playing with that whole, like I said, Warner Brothers gangsters vibe and feel. Doing the book in grayscale, you get that feeling of those old classic movies from, whatever. So that's Brother Bones, the Undead Avenger. And like I said, if people want to head out to, the Kickstarter preview page and sign on, we'd really appreciate it. And hopefully by the 12th of September, we will be going live. There you go.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, speaking of all the time in the world, we are out of time for tonight's show. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday on their respective days at their respective times. We will be back next week. And our topic is how to learn from reading comics. So if you're a young creator, an aspiring creator, or are someone who is actively creating comics, but you aren't quite sure, you don't read as much as you need to. Again, the writer's diet is read and write daily. So we're going to be talking about how to critically engage with comics, how to learn from what you're reading, whether it be learning what not to do or learning what things you like and how to do it. So, yeah,
osmosis, the process of osmosis.
Listen, you learn from an artistic point of view. You definitely learn reading comics. You learn, how are people laying out their panels? How are people laying out their pages? The sequential page. How are they working their flow? So yeah, that's a great subject.
It's a good topic. It's a good topic. Yeah, something we could all dig into. Totally. All right. Well, hey, we've taken over an hour of all you good people's time, which you're never getting back, by the way. So,
and if you're watching on YouTube or subscription services, make sure to give us a like, subscribe, share us, review, all that good stuff.
Right.
So,
and until next week,
make mine
Silverline.
Hi, I'm Dave Dorman. Make mine Silverline.